Okay, hi everyone, this is Andy Fawcett, Andy in the Cloud. Just going to give you a short demo of the new templates I've created around the Apex Enterprise patterns. So first of all, here's an empty org I've created from the Salesforce developer sign-up page, and those of you that are familiar with the patterns will know that we need to get some of the library support in there before we start using them. So before I go ahead and start creating classes around them, then let's deploy the library. You can get at the library in the usual way from GitHub, or you can use this deploy to Salesforce link that's on the README, and this will run up a tool that will deploy directly from GitHub into your Salesforce org. Now, because I'm already logged in, it'll immediately start the deployment, but if that wasn't the case, of course I'll be asked to log in. So that's quickly done that directly from GitHub, and we should be able to refresh, and yeah, the classes are there and present. So of course the next thing we need is an object. The number of patterns that are in Apex Enterprise patterns are around 3 of them. We've got the domain, the selector and the service layer, and the templates I've created in MavensMate are available for all of those patterns. So let's just create a very quick custom object. Call that the invoice object and save that. So now we've got our invoice object. Let's nip over to MavensMate and make sure we've got a domain class so we can encapsulate the behavior of that object and link it into the trigger event system. So we're going to go to the usual place. We're going to say new Apex class, and if you type domain in here, you'll see domain class comes up as one of the available templates. And here's the new bit that MavensMate has been introduced recently. You can now have multiple parameters to your template. And here we need the class name, it defaults to invoices, and the S-object name, which is the _C API name of the class. So we hit enter, and it goes off and uses the template to create our domain class for this object. So as most of you know that are familiar with the templates, with the patterns, we do need a trigger as well. So now we've got our domain class, it extends the right base class, got the usual constructor in there. I've given a few overrides already, but this is by no means exhaustive. There are many other overrides for different events that you can choose from, and also an example of a custom method that encapsulates logic that's not necessarily related to trigger events, and the usual boilerplate constructor at the bottom. So that's all well and good, we're ready to start coding there, but we do need a little bit more plumbing in the form of a trigger, and as most of you know, it's a very small trigger, but still we've got some help in the form of a template here. So again, new domain trigger. The defaults for these templates do default to something. I chose to use the one that I'm using in my demo. Makes things a bit easier typing wise. So that's now going off creating an Apex trigger. And yeah, it looks pretty much as you'd expect. The one-liner passing in the name of the class, the domain class we've just created. I've chosen to introduce some comments here, so those that maybe haven't installed the library can do so with that link there. It's the same link I used just a few moments ago, and also each of these links to the appropriate documentation on Salesforce developer wiki. So there we have a fully operational S-object domain class for invoices. Bulkifications covered through the fact that it takes a list of records in, and that's what you operate on. So if you want to know more about the patterns, just come across this post, then do take a look at some of the links and those on the blog post this video is related to. Before we end, let's just have a quick look at some of the other templates that are in here. We do have the selector pattern represented, so if you just type selector in here, you get the prompt. And the name of the selector is usually suffixed by the word selector, and then the S-object name as well as before. I already started to think of some improvements to make in the templating engine, even further than what's been done already, such as perhaps querying the metadata as part of the template creation, maybe pulling in the fields that are on that S-object. I've included ID and name because they're typically the most common for custom objects anyway, and a bit of a smaller, more advanced example for this selector. So again, that kind of gets things going. You don't have to remember what the base class is and what the default methods you have to override. You're ready to start either using the default functionality, this selector, or coding some more complex query logic. Once again, the link to the specific documentation about this pattern is included in the comments. And then finally, of course, we've got the good old service layer, probably my most favourite of the patterns. We've got the service class here, so pick that. This time we don't really need an S object. The idea of the service layer is it's kind of driven by how you choose to modularize the functionality in your application, so really only interested in the class name in this case. So not particularly fancy, this template. It does get you started with a naming convention and the fact that typically they're stateless services you're exposing, so we use static as a convention here, and again you've got the comments. So hopefully that's useful to anyone using the patterns and MavensMate. I know I'll certainly be using it, and developers will be. And give me any feedback you'd like, and we can work on enhancing the templates accordingly. Thank you very much.